The following is an interview I did with Mike of the Maine Primitive Skills School. We talk about the earth shelters that he built at the school and how they relate to traditional cultures like the Cree and the Sami. Well, today we're going to talk about Mike's Turtle Lodge and how it relates to the Sami shelters in Sweden.
Yes, so this Turtle Lodge came to us through the Cree lineage and through Grandfather Ray, who wanted a adorable, efficient shelter to raise his family after he came home from Vietnam. And it had to be low maintenance and low cost. And he went back to his own upbringing, his training, and he built one of these and ended up having 3 or 4 of them on his land, running a guide service and raising his girls into adulthood and through college with his own craft, building canoes, running guided trips, and living in an earth lodge. Mm-hmm. When I went to Sweden the first time, I was in tears because it was this. It was this with modifications unique to that landscape. So we have 2 different people, 2 different language groups chasing the same species of animal. In Sweden it's the reindeer, and here's the woodland caribou, and they're doing so with the same methodology, spreading seeds in the understory through the migratory grazing patterns and promoting health and diversity in the landscape so that the people would also be healthy. And we can see that when we go to Sweden. We can see the big birch trees that still exist because they were given care. The gardeners were plugged fully into their land. They pull more moose out of that area every hunting season than we have in all of New England. So being in a space where humanity had productively interacted with the landscape throughout the generations, and it still shows in comparison to the Maine woods, which has been cut 3 and 4 times over. This used to be a big rolling farm field. That's why the rock walls are still here. But geologically, the glaciers are still out there. You can't walk on the rocks without them wiggling. Here, they're settled. The rocks are firm along the coast. The lakes look identical, right? So there's similar species, there's similar geology, but there's a vast difference in the age of the land and its harshness of climate because we're further north in the Arctic Circle. But almost paradoxically, the bounty of the land because of how the people involved themselves in a dialogue of gardening and caretaking throughout the generations. So yeah, this shelter is just one of many expressions that primitive doesn't mean stupid. It's the wisdom of our ancestors refined and honed through millennia, and we have this ability to grab a hold of these precious gifts and hold them against the needs of our modern world. And I've seen people's lives change on this trip. The realizations and aha moments that each person has, individual, unique, highly personal, but always I see at least an inspirational tear come up once in a while on every person involved. But more than often is they go out and they have a different perspective on the life they have left and how they should live it to the fullest. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this shelter helps with that.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
I guess I'll now ask a more practical question. Like how does this shelter retain heat, or how does it move heat around the shelter?
So this is a very efficient thermal envelope. You'll notice there's no corners to heat. It's a nice organic continuous curve, an oval pattern. And spheres and ovals are the way to go with most indigenous shelter designs, from the robin's nest to the Inuits, the Quinzis, to the Kotas and the Levos and the earth lodges. When we start to plug into that with our heating systems, we run into trouble only because we're no longer nomadic. We used to be nomadic, so we would have open sky and the finger poles and that very top part of the peak, and the smoke, which there wasn't a lot. It was mostly coals tended by the grandmother, right? She's the owner of the hearth, and then there's the mom who's the owner of the lodge, and then there's the huntress who's providing an interface between the family fire and the rest of the world. So in that space, as it was taught to me, we handle the fire as if it's a warming breath. We can't let it just go out into space because all of these trees would be gone. Right. So we have to button it up. Now, as soon as I buttoned it up, I ran into new problems. Right? The efficiency of our ancestors can't be argued with, but we've changed the rules. We can no longer migrate. We're stuck in one spot, and in that spot, we can take that forest out. Look at Ireland. It's a lawn. Right? It used to be a forest. We do that when we're not careful. So rocket stoves, which by the way are another indigenous technique. The Dakota fire pit, anyone? Or that whole idea of burning up like this isn't a rocket stove. We just use modern materials to get it out of the ground. Right? And then the exhaust it's wrapped around like radiant floorboard heating with the idea that we're going to suck the heat out through conductive cob and slowly release it through the night. And the result is when you burn in that rocket stove, 40-45 minute fire, you can let it burn out and this place will stay warm until morning. 10 to 20 degrees warmer than outside even. Pretty efficient shelter design. It distributes the heat evenly. It slows the exchange of cold dense air as your warm air leaves the shelter. And the insulation property of the organic material on top degrades and becomes an edible roof.
Wow.
So yeah, the small footprint left behind, if you live in this, it'll last for over 100 years. If you let it fall apart, it becomes a pile of organic material, rich, fertile soil, right? And the old ones, the new ones, because we don't have birch bark, I'm using recycled roofing rubber. It's the new landscape. It's going to the dump. It still works. It's nowhere near as good as birch bark. Nowhere near. I've taken apart parts of houses that were built in the 1600s to revamp them and restore them. And the birch bark vapor barriers, sandwiched in between the hand-hewn lumber and the blacksmith pounded square nails, was still pliable and it looked like it came fresh off the tree. So the stomata allow breathability, the latex constituents inside the phytochemical profile, waterproofing, flexible, rugged, breathable. Better than Tyvek. We haven't invented a fabric as good yet. So, yeah, we don't have those anymore.
Right.
But they do in Sweden, right? It's amazing the amount of intention that goes behind crafting the habitat for the habitat's sake.